Good afternoon, everyone. Today I, vachhlata Joshi, and Hirva Pandya is going to deal with comparative literature in the age of digital humanities by Todd presener. So here is the abstract of the article. With the invention of printing press, communication literacy and the state of knowledge completely changed the providing and condition of possible for the reinformation of age of humanism and rise of mass media. The impact of print and the discovery of the new world was predicted by networking technologies, which not only enabled the dissemination of knowledge and new culture and social spheres. The invention of the electric telegraph, the heyday of colonization, the exploitation of the natural world, the electrification of cities, the rise of translation finance, and the internet, and the new media of the radio, film, and television was a part of rise of media, uh, ex- explosion of real-time social networking on handheld devices. These technologies have a common thing, a contraction of time and space through the control of regulation of knowledge, information, and bodies. In this regard, every technology has a dialectical underbelly, facilitating the potential democratization of information and exchange on the one hand and the ability to exercise the exclusionary control and violence on the other. On page number 194, this is the key points of the article: Age of Humanism, Rise of Mass Media, Sharing and Transforming Humanistic and Scientific Knowledge, and Liberation of Humankind. On page number 94, there is one critic, Nicholas. He says that in his book Being Digital, that mobile phones, social networking technologies, and perhaps even $100 computer will not be used to enhance education, spread democracy, and enable global communication, but will likely to be used to perpetrate violence and even orchestrate genocide in the much the same way that radio and railway did in the last century. Another one is Paul Gilroy. He analyzed in his study of the fatal junction of the concept of nationality with the concept of culture, along with the Black Atlantic voyages of discovery, enlightenment, and progress, also meant at the very moment voyages of conquest, enslavement, and destruction. Was there a new communication technologies, including but hardly limited to web-based media forms, locative technologies, digital archives, cloud computing, social networking, and mixed realities was one aspect of digital humanization. And Catherine Hales ponders various possible futures for for comparative literature in the second decade of the 21st century. How to rouse ourselves from the Solomons of 500 years of print. The key points of the article: materiality is the interplay between a text, physical characteristics, and its signifying practices, as Hales argues, allows us to consider the text as embodied entities and still foreground in interpretative practices. Uh, Benjamin did in the Arcades project both the media and the methodologies for the study of literature, culture, and society, just as Benjamin sought to employ the montage from the transformed historical scholarship by refocusing attention on what it means to write history, and digital media enable us to refocus on the media methodologies and affordance of print culture in the practice of comparative literature. What happens when print is no longer the normative or exclusive medium for producing literature and undertaking literary studies? While electronic literatures offer a significant and multivalent possibility for exploring the future of comparative literature, I want to examine uh, the field of bit more broadly by situating the transforming of the literacy and set of issues that have emerged over the past decade in the digital humanities. Comparative literature, since they question that they have formed the methodological, disciplinary, and institutional foundation of a wide range of academic fields in the humanities, including history, art, literacy, and culture studies. The humanistic social sciences such as anthropology, archaeology, and information study. The purpose of this chapter is to provide some preliminary signpost for figuring out what is means for the humanities generally and for comparative literature more specifically. A term which is still needs the qualifier digital in order to highlight the proliferation of the media and the move away from strictly print artifacts. Digital humanities projects are almost collaborative. It is an umbrella term which wide array from interdisciplinary practices for creating, applying, interpreting, and interrogating and hacking both new information and all new information and new technologies. Here one critic Jeffrey says digital humanities manifesto it is essential that humanists accept and insert themselves into 20th century in these cultural wars. Humanists, foundations, and universities conspicuously silent when Google won its book search lawsuit and effectively won the right to transfer copyright of orphaned books to itself. Digital Millennium Copyright Act radically restricting intellectual property and copyright sharing. Humanists are engaged with the digital culture, production, publishing, access, and ownership. The European avant-garde in the early 20th century, the Digital Humanities Manifesto is bold in its claims, fiery in its language, and utopian in its vision. We are now in the fifth decade of the fourth information age in the history of humankind. In digital humanities, Google has scanned catalogs and made searchable more than 10 million books. Another app is Technorati has indexed more than 130 million blogs since 2002. Uh, JSTOR, the blogosphere has over 6 million articles from more than 6,000 publishers, and Facebook is currently has more than 25 billion pieces of content posted by users, and there is Flickr and Twitter too. Users produce on average 55 million tweets per day, which will now be archived and catalogued by the Library of Congress. Franco Moretti's provocation is to consider comparative literature as a problem that asks for new critical methods. The problem of comparative literature is to figure out how to take seriously the range of new authoring, annotation, and sharing platforms that have transformed the global and cultural production. It is about post and print age. We must actively engage with this design, create, critique, and finally hack the environments and technologies that facilitates this research. The world of print are comparatively different in interactivity and expressivity, but this is not to say that digital media is more evolved than print media or books are obsolete. So here was my presentation. Now I like to call Hirva Pandya for second half part.
Page number 199, second paragraph. Needless to say, we will have to design and employ new tools to thoughtfully sift through, analyze, map, and evaluate unfathomably large bulge of data and cultural material. That digital age has already unleashed something that will require humanists to contend with text meaning tools, machine reading, and various kinds of algorithm analysis. Indeed, Moretti has already indicated one possible way of doing this articulation of distinct reading, a specific form of analysis that focuses on larger units and fewer elements in order to reveal their overall interconnection, shapes, relations, structure, form, and models. It is a term specifically against hermeneutics extracting meaning from the text through ever closer microscopic reading, but beyond the distinct reading, we might entertain possibility of machine reading in which trends, correlation, and relationship would be extracted through computational methods. Hales points out in her recent studies that the transforming power of the digital humanities, even if we were read a book for our entire adult life, the upper end and the number of books that can be read about 25,000. As we are the first decade of the massive transformation, it may be somewhat premature articulation new disciplinary, methodological, and institutional fault lines. Concept of literary or equally vexing notion of what constitute literature and culture are terms of owe much of their meaning as object of knowledge study and pleasure in humanistic tradition into the history of writing and inscription practices. As Frederick Kettler calls, of system of writing down. These systems are not limited to print but include vastly differentiated material history of knowledge system from the stone carving, leather folio, and parchment scrolls, illuminated manuscripts, printed books, and CD-ROMs. Now various forms of electronic literature, web-based media, and digital authoring environments. Comparative media studies. There are three features of comparative literature. The first is comparative media studies. Comparative media has been positively inflected by so-called visual turn of the 20th century, opening the horizon of comparative literary and textual study to the field of art, history, photography, film, and perhaps to somewhat lesser extent, television, digital media offer more fundamental challenge since they not only transform media assumption built into traditional study, but also scholarly environment. Digital media are always already hypermedia and hypertextual. Both originally terms were coined 1965 by the visionary media theorist Theodore Nelson. For Nelson, hypertext is body of written pictorial material interconnected in such complex way that it would be not conveniently represented on paper. Such a system could grow indefinitely, gradually including more and more of the world's written knowledge. How then there is two questions are there, that how then the comparative literature can be practiced when scholarly work are created, exchanged and critique multimodal environments such as the West. And second is the how do we as a scholar develop methodology that appreciate, evaluate media specificity of every literary culture artifact. Comparative media studies foreground the material of the quality surface structure upon which inscriptions are made of the process of reproduction and circulation, the institutional mechanism of dissemination and authorization of the reading navigation practices enabled by media form and the social implication for literacy and knowledge production. Comparative media studies imply that output or scholarly work is not unimedial and for that matter might not be even textual. Comparative media studies enable return some fundamental question that who is author, what is a work, what constitute particularly in environment which text readily writerly by potentially anyone. Comparative data studies. Google has already digitalized and indexed more than 10 million books, allowing scholars to perform ever more complex searches, discover patterns, and potentially export large data sets derived from the digital books repository into other applications such as geographic information system. In order to pursue quantitative questions such as statistical correlation and publishing history and semantic analysis as well qualitative hermeneutical question spurred by the work Liu Manovich and Noah Wardrip. The field of cultural analytics has emerged over the past 5 years to bring the tools of high-end computational analysis and data visualization to dissect large scale of cultural data sets. Comparative data studies allow to use computational tools of the cultural analytics to enhance literary scholarship precisely by creating orders, visualization, maps and semantic webs of data are simply too large to read, comprehend using unaided human faculties. Comparative data studies also radical broadens the canon of object cultural material under consideration. On one hand, originally constituted as singular object in one medium. On the other hand, born digital objects, whether blog, web page, videos, etc. As Megan argues that regarding to the first, his elegant analysis of radiant textuality, the difference between the codex and electronic versions of Oxford dictionaries. Com- compare, com- Comparative authorship and platform studies. Why the comparative authorship and that platform studies claims the web and information technologies should certainly critically interrogated. There is a concept of collaborative authorship, peer-to-peer sharing content, and crowdsources evaluation of data are the hallmarks of the participatory web, known as the world of the Web 2.0. We no longer just browse and passively consume pre-digested content but actively engage in production, annotation and evaluation digital media software thanks to open source movement. James Boyles point out there are many cooperative entities eager regulate relate the public domain control commons of mind. For Boyle, the real danger is not unauthorized file sharing, but field sharing due to enclosure and stricture placed upon Creative Commons. Comparative literature has not concerned itself with design interactivity, navigation strategy. These issues are decisive part of comparative authorship and platform study. In a print model, scholars typically handed off the content of their manuscript to publisher who did layout design, editing, print, dissemination of the work. Now, this work moved to the forefront of digital humanities. There is other academic platforms such as Grand Text Auto, USC Experimental Authoring and Collaboration Platform Scalar, Rise University Press, Connection and Institute for Future. The book variously explored knowledge production and legitimacy in the post-print era by the re-examining authorship, design, peer review, and participatory dimension of the scholarship. My own work, Hypercities, a collaborative digital mapping platform for the exploring, authoring, and complex layers of the city spaces. Wikipedia is a revolutionary knowledge production and editing platform. It is represent a dynamic, flexible, and open-ended network for knowledge. It is most comprehensive, representative, and perceived participatory platform for knowledge production ever created by humankind. This article is mainly focused on 21st century in terms of digital humanities. After discussing various arguments, we come to know that the date it has then more 300 million edits, 47 languages. It is worth some pause and reflection in a future disciplinary incarnation of the comparative literature. This research renders this world as a world and produce knowledge about who we are, where we live, and what that means. Thank you.